Good evening and welcome to Gwinnett County Public Library. This is the Meet the Author series, and tonight we feature Dr. India Jones. She has books for sale over here before and after the program, and she'd be happy to autograph them for you. The program is being recorded, and it will appear in a few weeks up on our YouTube channel. So thank you for coming out this evening. Dr. India Jones is a board-certified internist who has been practicing general medicine in Greater Atlanta area for the last 10 years. Often her patients have gone through some life challenges and transition which affect their health. She particularly connects with her female patients. So when looking at her personal life, she decided to write a guide that would help connect the dots for women relative to their unique challenges. She is with us tonight, and her book is Healthy Living for Women. Please help me welcome Dr. India Jones.
Thank you so much, Denise, for that introduction, and thank you, beautiful ladies, for coming out, and gentlemen, to listen to me speak about my book. When we think about health and wellness, we have to think about two key areas of wellness, of health. And that has to do with your mind and your body, and that connection and that interaction. It really can't go ignored if you really want to be well. And what I found as a practicing physician, actually 14 years now since I wrote that bio, is that many times the mental or emotional side of health is ignored or just underappreciated. So when I think about the patients that I see that come through the emergency department, that Dr. Taylor calls me and says, Indy, this one's got to come in. I can't send them home. So I have these patients on my roster that I round on in the hospital setting, and we run a battery of tests based on what the symptoms were. So we may have a diagnosis right off the bat, and sometimes we don't know. We just have symptoms, right? Yeah, sometimes we just have symptoms. And so we work up this differential diagnosis, and it's my job to run further tests. Maybe there's a CT scan involved, an MRI involved, always some blood work, and mainly we have to get a thorough history. So this is one of the fundamental things that I learned in medical school. You can learn so much if you just ask the right questions. And maybe that's why my son over there and my oldest son say, you ask too many questions. It really comes in handy. It really does, because you can get a wealth of information if you ask the right questions. So patients will look at me and say, I just told Dr. Taylor all this. Do I have to go through this again? And as you get more information, they didn't mention that to her, and things come out, and even the next day, and the day after that, depending on how long you're in the hospital, more information may come out. And sometimes we don't even come up with the diagnosis, but what we had were some symptoms that warranted further evaluation. So I think about it, and when I have the time, I try to take my time. When the opportunity presents itself, when it's just a puzzle, doc, what is this? If I didn't have a stroke, if I didn't have a heart attack, what's going on? So that's when I start asking more questions and probing into the patient's personal life. I get pretty personal with my patients, and I think they feel comfortable enough with me to do that. And many times what I find is that stress is at the root of their presentation. Now, stress can cause physical symptoms. It can exacerbate known conditions. If your heart failure is acting up, your kidney failure, all these things, your diverticulitis, you're having a bout of that again. So stress can flare known conditions, but it can also mimic more serious conditions. I'm often reminded of a friend of mine who began to read my book, and she had to close it and put it aside. It took her a little while to pick it back up again, and I said, well, what's wrong? She said, you reminded me of something. And it had to do with her heart condition. Her heart became weakened at a certain point, but it had to do with a surge of emotional upset, the biochemistry that affects the mind to the point that the body is negatively impacted. Now, the cardiologist ran some tests. There's no blockage of the arteries of the heart, but nonetheless, the heart got weak for a season, for a period, and she still has to be treated like a heart failure patient. She still has to be treated with the appropriate heart medications, but what we have to really do is get to the root of the problem, and that's the stress that brought on these symptoms in the first place. So over the years, when I see this and in my own personal life and know how stress can impact you, how it can cause physical symptoms, and I said, let me do some writing, which was very therapeutic for me, having gone through a divorce and losing my mother the next year, my sister the next year, and trying to keep myself together, try to manage my stress, go through the grief process, go through the life transition process, which many times is at the root of some of the physical symptoms that I see. And the thing is with women, why I titled my book, Healthy Living for Women, these concepts are universal. We're trying to get the men to acknowledge that they have emotions, right? And so this is for the men watching as well. But the women that I talk to and interact with are more receptive to doing the work, even if they have to put the book aside a few times and come back to it. And the book has become a resource for many. There's something in it for everybody. So the thing is, you have to be intentional about your health and your wellness. Now, Healthy Living for Women, it is an easy read. It is a guide, okay? I've had women read it very quickly, and I said, hey, did you pause and do the reflections? Did you pause and do the exercises? I want you to go back and do that. So it's power-packed with a lot of therapeutic interventions and reflections. And when I say therapeutic, is because we're all a work in progress, and we all have this thing called stress. It never totally leaves us, but what we have to learn to do is manage it in such a way that it doesn't negatively affect us, particularly with our physical health. So the mind and the body, that interconnection. The book is heavily weighted on the mind. The subtitle, even though it's at the top of the book, is It's More Than Meets the Mind. Health and wellness, it all starts and ends with your mind. There's this biochemistry that goes to and fro from the brain to the body, all the different organ systems, and certain thoughts and emotions that come from those thoughts can elicit certain things, okay? So you cannot really separate emotions from the physiologic responses that the body has. And many times you're unconscious, you're not quite aware of what's going on until maybe it gets to a key level that you're coming into the hospital and you're like, my chest is hurting, or I can't breathe, or I can't, move my arm, or just something. So emotions can be, and they are heavily tied into what we call psychosomatic symptoms. And we don't judge patients if we can't find an organic reason for their symptoms. But again, we have to get to the root of the problem. So in the book, I really emphasize the importance of appreciating that mind-body connection. And then I go into some common emotions we all experience. We experience fear, we experience anger, self-doubt, anxiety. Now, definitely we have the mental health field that deals with disorders where some of these emotions fall into the category of a condition that needs medication, needs therapy, and what have you. But I'm just talking generally to all of us that we have these emotions. So we have this ability to remember. And I'm sure that you can dredge up some positive memories, right, of some wonderful things, some of the happiest times in your life, and it does something to you. Doesn't it give you a calm, a certain peace? It can lower your heart rate if you think about it long enough. It can just ease the tension in your muscles. But then on the flip side, we have those emotions that aren't so pleasant. We call them negative, but emotions are emotions. And what we need to do is learn how to process them. We need to learn how to tap in and understand what we are feeling and allow ourselves to feel it. Now, this is a challenge. This is a challenge. On page 10 of the book, I have a flow diagram to help guide you in this thought emotion processing. Because a lot of times you have a thought that elicits an unpleasant emotion, a physiologic sensation in your body. And then sometimes you have thoughts about the emotion you're feeling and about the thought that caused that. And many times you can have negative commentary. And you have this conversation going on in your head, which is also increasing the stress. And sometimes we repress. Many times we do. So as it relates to the mind-body connection, I try to educate women in my wellness practice, my virtual wellness coaching that I do when I'm not putting out fires in the hospital. I try to stress the importance of really thinking when you're choosing what you're going to eat and how much you're going to eat, to ask yourself sometimes, once in a while, am I eating because I'm hungry, or am I eating from an emotional state of being? What am I feeding? Am I feeding hunger, or am I feeding an emotion? And how do I feel once I've done that? And is it really getting to the root of it? So on page 10, there's a diagram. And to the far left, again, we talk about repression and how we don't want to do that, right? And we want to use this gift of the breath to be able to breathe. And I would like everybody to just, for a moment, just relax your muscles, okay? And just relax your body and just take some deep breaths, okay? So can you just breathe with me right now? Okay, breathe in. And breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. One more time. Breathe in. And breathe out. All right. So at any moment in time when you're having an uncomfortable reaction to a thought or an experience in the moment, it doesn't have to be a memory. It's what you're experiencing. Take the time to breathe. Take those deep breaths. Again, there's some biochemistry that goes on and reduces the stress hormone level when you can learn how to breathe. But in that process of breathing, you're also making room for the emotion that you're feeling, as opposed to letting it get bottled up and stuck there, and you're like, I don't want to feel that, I don't want to think that, and what am I going to do? I need you to breathe. So as you're practicing breathing through the conscious awareness of what you're feeling, even though you don't like feeling it, it's going to pass. It's going to pass when you make room for it. And when there's a recurring cycle like that, then you want to make sure you're not attached to the emotion or the thought process. You learn to detach by becoming proactive. So that might mean speaking to someone, your primary care physician, a therapist, a counselor. I have many women that I coach that are also in therapy. You know, it's similar, but it's very different. I know how to stay in my lane, right? So I can bring things to light that needs attention and create what's at the end of the book. The last chapter is the most important, and that is your personal health and wellness plan. How many of you know that being well takes a plan? Do you think it just happens that you wake up every day and I'm just going to be well? What do you think? No? I didn't think so. But we run this rat race called life, and it just keeps us busy or chasing our tail sometimes. We feel like it. But as women, we are so adept at taking care of everything and everyone else but ourselves. And one emotion that we often feel is guilt. How many of you feel guilty when you take care of yourself, when you put yourself first? Yeah. It's kind of how we were wired. It's in our DNA. And so we have to uncross the wires and do some rewiring and realize that self-care is not a selfish proposition. It's essential. It will fully equip you to do all those things that are important to you. It will equip you to be there for your loved ones, to pursue your life purpose, all those good things, because we naturally have this caregiving nature. Many of us are very altruistic, and we just don't think about ourselves. So I want to challenge you that as you read Healthy Living for Women, you work on your total wellness plan, which is fluid. It's going to change from week to week, depending on the week, depending on the moment. And as you're writing it down, as you are scheduling things that are going to afford you to be well, all those things, you're going to start to see a change. I would suggest that you give yourself the first 30 minutes to an hour of the day. Does that sound crazy? Does it sound possible? Even if it means getting up an extra 30 minutes to 60 minutes, I think you can do this. It really sets the pace. So my wellness plan this week, I've gone very part-time, or what we call PRN as needed at the hospital. I'll see you next week. And so in my wellness plan, that was part of my wellness plan, to cut down on my hours. And so this week, every morning, I take that young gentleman to school, and I'm fully dressed in my exercise attire. And I go to that gym that I've been paying for the last 6 months and not going to, okay? So that's on my wellness plan this week. And it sets the pace, it sets the stage. I do my weights, and then I go to the park because I'm an outdoors girl. And I would suggest that on your wellness plan, you incorporate being outdoors, getting in nature, and you have the wonderful opportunity to do that because of where you live. It's why I live here. It's why I chose to not go back to Buffalo, New York after my training. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why I'm here. Even my patients, when I chit-chat, oh, Buffalo, I get it. Never been there, but it has a reputation, right? So I'm a sunshine girl. And besides the vitamin D that most of us are deficient in, trying to help facilitate raising that level, it's just something that is very mind rejuvenating, kind of resting and rejuvenating at the same time. So getting in touch with nature. So I have a routine. I have a wellness plan, and I also have a planner. So I do want to encourage you to get the downloadable version or print it off. I have a planner that will help facilitate you having a plan, writing it down, and executing it. Using it as a visual reminder that you are worth it. And we hear the buzz phrase self-love, right? Yeah, we want to learn how to love ourselves. Let's just give yourself a hug. You can do that? Want to do that right now? And say, I am worth it, right? I am love. And so we always say love is action, right? We tell other people, you're not loving me in the right way because you're not treating me right. How about how you're treating yourself, right? Okay. So don't feel guilty because you're not, and don't feel guilty because you do. This is a judgment-free zone. Again, we're all a work in progress, but just being able to live the life that you want, to manifest what you want. I'm doing what I thought about probably about 10 years ago. It was a little fuzzy, didn't quite know what it looked like, but I'm doing it. I had a plan, and I want you to have a plan. There's the big picture plan, but you have to take care of your mind and your body in order to execute it. 'Cause that's what we have, right? We have thoughts, and we have the physical nature. Sometimes you may have some limitations as we get older, or some conditions, but you can overcome them. You can be well. Did you know that you can be well and healthy in spite of a diagnosis? Yes, I inherited hypertension, the youngest of 6, both parents, siblings, and I'm just looking like, is that coming my way? And sure enough, it did. I found out as an intern in Greenville, North Carolina, Just had my son breastfeeding, stressed out, new town, intern, long hours. And my blood pressure went through the roof. And I had this unease in my body. So again, the mind-body connection. I knew something wasn't right, and I knew I got those bad genes. So I went and I had my blood pressure checked, and I was officiated into the high blood pressure club. Fast forward, it happened to me in the hospital. Years down the line, after I lost weight, started eating well, reducing stress, but the genetics caught up with me, so you have to know. And one of the nurses, I think it was on 8th South, was like, after I checked my blood pressure, she's like, Dr. Jones, you're going to the emergency department. I'm like, no, I'm not. She's like, yes, you are. Let's go. So I had to adjust, my treatment plan with my medication. So you want to be holistic in your approach. There is a role for medicine. I believe in it. That's why I'm a doctor. I haven't abandoned medicine. But there's a role for you to play in your total wellness. It's multifaceted. It's not just a pill. It's not just a fad diet. It's none of those things. It's what works for you in accordance with your core values. And so you want to have a preventative plan. So no matter where you're at today in terms of your life overall, a wellness plan is going to help you deal with when something happens a little bit easier, because you'll have the tools in your arsenal to be able to do that. You'll have this baseline of wellness and peace that you can deal with the ebbs, the peaks and the trough of life. It's like the waves of the ocean and the emotions that come with those things. How does it sound to have a wellness plan? What do you think? Think that's a good idea? And starting with how you think, because we have to consider mindsets too. There's a chapter in the book that I'm sure we can all find ourselves in. I give little scenarios. I made up the names, there's no one in particular, about different things that we do, such as catastrophizing things, taking things personal. So I give lots of scenarios that you can relate to, I'm sure, somewhere in there, in a way in which you can reframe how you think about certain things, because as you think, so you shall be. So this is what I have to share with you about healthy living for women. Does it sound like an interesting read? All right. I want to open it up for any questions that anybody has.
When you were talking about the mind and body, and there's so many books now and things about the stomach being the second mind. So can you tell us what you think about that? I know the stomach holds a lot of tension.
Yes, it does. There's different angles to that. Having a healthy gut, probably, and taking probiotics, so you can look at it from a medical standpoint. One condition that comes to mind is irritable bowel syndrome. And so there's some connection with the mind and the body and the autonomic nervous system and just the nerve connections that can cause upset, right? And your mental state of being is heavily tied into that. Stress can flare that, where you have diarrhea or you have constipation and pain or what have you. So it's very true that they are very connected, but I always say it starts here. You can have a condition based on we don't know why, or genetics, nature and nurture and things that happen that mixes with who you are, the core essence of who you are and what makes you who you are and what you're experiencing at that time, because certain stresses can affect different people different ways. And so you want to make sure you target the mind and the gut, having that healthy diet, right? And whole grains, fresh vegetables, fruit, less processed foods, decrease the sugar, decrease the salt, plenty of water, all those things we know, right? And to promote a good, healthy gut and address the stress at the same time. I hope that answers your question. Okay, all right. Anyone else? Or comment?
Do you have a next book that you're planning on writing?
I thought I did, and I said, so many, being a self-published author, I said, so many don't know about this one. So I said, I'm going to push it a little bit more until I'm inspired to say, okay, book number 2.
And what would it be about?
A continuation, but just a little bit more in depth. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have a question?
I was going to say that the thing that helped me relieve stress the most was retiring. It was so nice.
Yes.
Well, I worked 46 years and as an administrative assistant, and somebody asked me the week before I retired, I've been retired 9 years, they asked me, what are you looking forward to the most? The first day that you're retired. I said, no, I'm looking forward to the night that I retire. And they said, why? And I said, because I won't have to set my alarm.
That's right.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if I still wake up at 6 or I wake up at 10. I don't have to. So, yeah.
Well, congratulations on your retirement.
And I get to spend it with that nice man right there.
I still wake up at 6 every morning.
He's a smart husband. He doesn't make noise. Which is why we're still married.
And maybe you're a heart sleeper, I don't know.
Well, I am. It's funny, when our daughter was little, if she woke up in the middle of the night, I guess she learned, don't come to mama's side, go to daddy's side. But anyway.
I've heard 2 schools of thought with respect to high blood pressure and diabetes.
Okay.
Some will say it's inherited, some will say you inherit bad habits. So I'd like to hear more about your thoughts on that. If high blood pressure and diabetes are often in your family, can you avoid that with a good diet? Or if they have that, you still may inherit it anyway, regardless of what proactive steps you take to be healthy?
Very good question. So like the example that I used with myself, it's not a sentence of you should feel helpless, but you definitely, in medicine, it's about odds. And, I'm not real big in statistics, but that's what it boils down to. So what are the odds? What are your risk factors? They have risk scores that doctors use to say, who do they need to come in the hospital because of their age and these other things? They're likely to have a worse outcome, so we need to make sure they're stable and not just release them from the emergency department. So all the more should you have a wellness plan when you know you have a strong family history of something. You have to be in the know. But you certainly can particularly with diabetes. I have clients that I help not get on insulin or decrease their diabetes medication because of the lifestyle modification and what their movement does so much. I say movement, exercise. It does so much to help keep you on minimal medicine, and sometimes you can get off of medicine. So they work hand in hand. Yeah. So you shouldn't feel bad if you did all that you could, like me, and you still have a diagnosis. It's manageable. Minimal medication, and sometimes reversal, especially in the area of diabetes. I've seen that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. See beautiful smiles. Thank you, Tiffany. Anyone else? Yes.
When it comes to treatment of diabetes, are all sugars the same?
No, we have categories. It's the carbohydrates are the issue. And so you have the simple carbs and you have the complex carbs, and they have tools that you can use, glycemic index, and what have you. So there's certain foods that will spike your blood sugar more quickly than others. Like your vegetables. The vegetables are great. I keep talking about vegetables. I think we should all plan our meals around vegetables as opposed to meat, like we've been conditioned in our society. So I have a client, again, who she learned how to watch the carbs, the pasta, the rice, and the potatoes and all those things. So it's about portion control. And so they're not all made the same. Calorie, how many calories, and the propensity for that food to spike your blood sugar versus another one. So one type of carb, like some, low calorie, low carb count broccoli or whatever. It's just going to keep you, good, as opposed to if you eat a potato. Does that answer your question? Yes. It's portion control, and some patients with diabetes carb count, particularly if they're on insulin and they take insulin with their meals. There's so many different medications for diabetes. You have insulin, you have pills, you have injections, and they all work in a different way. It may stimulate your pancreas to make more insulin, make you more sensitive to insulin. Medicines where, the food goes to your system more quickly, all kinds of things, less absorption. So there's different mechanisms to help treat it, but your strongest mechanism, most powerful, more bang for your buck, and save some bucks as far as the medicine, is the movement, the exercise, losing weight, and eating a healthy diet.
Add to that. I'm originally from South Louisiana.
Okay.
LSU, the university, has come out with, they did research for years. They've come out with a new type of white rice called parish rice, P-A-R-I-S-H, because Louisiana has parishes, not counties. And it has a very low glycemic index to it. And so the last time we were back home, we bought some, and it tastes just like regular rice.
Okay, that's
So
nice. Hadn't heard
I
of it.
think you can order it online now.
Okay.
I don't know that it's in the grocery stores yet up here. It's all over South Louisiana though.
Yeah.
But it,
Because with diabetes, you're insulin resistant. You can have high levels of insulin, but it's not allowing the sugar to get into the cells where it needs to be. And so again, exercise and getting your weight down drastically helps compensate for that. And many patients, I get worried sometimes patients' blood sugar get too low when their lifestyle changes. So your doctor has to really work with you to make sure medicines are adjusted so you're not getting dangerously low either.
that feels bad.
Yes.
Because I've been there.
I'd love for you to talk a little bit about sleep and stress and some of the things that can happen. I know a good friend of mine can only get about 4 hours sleep a night. They're waking up and they're having difficulty, and they feel that it's causing migraines, things like migraines.
Right.
So, which was surprising to me. Could you talk a little bit about sleep?
Sure. You have to have good sleep hygiene in terms of decreasing any stimulatory impact, like from caffeine, of course, things like that. You want to take the measures to help reduce stress, right? And you want to make sure you don't have a sleep disorder, one common one being sleep apnea. So your doctor may ask questions if you're waking up. Are you waking up gasping for air? Is the person sleeping with you complaining that you're snoring and they have to go almost down to the block away from you to try to, get some sleep themselves? So you want to be able to make sure you're not missing that diagnosis. Sleep apnea is a very common one. And that negatively impacts your heart, your lungs, and your heart over time if not properly addressed. So you really have, again, that history taken, I would really need to know on a case-by-case basis, what are your habits throughout the day that may prohibit you from getting enough sleep? What's your level of stress? What's on your mind? What do we need to do to help facilitate that? And are you having any signs of a sleep disorder?
Does your book talk about perimenopause and hormone replacement therapy? And if it does not, what would you say about those areas?
I hint at it, or I kind of gloss over it, if you will, because again, the book is more about the mind and the mindset. But that being said, there are certain symptoms that if it shows that you're in perimenopause and your hormone levels, you really need to talk with a gynecologist. I would just say perimenopause is essentially when you have erratic menses and you have to have no cycle for 12 months consecutively before you have gone through, your postmenopausal. Those uncomfortable symptoms, mine recently came back. I don't know why, because I'm past all that, I'm supposed to be. But the hot flashes and what have you. But there are a lot of different combinations. There's an ART hormone replacement that a gynecologist is better equipped to talk to about, customized to see if indeed you need some type of hormone replacement. When you get postmenopausal, it's tricky because you lose your estrogen after you go through menopause. So you got to weigh the risk and benefits, particularly at that phase of life, to make sure you don't have an increased risk of cancer when you're just taking estrogen. Some patients get on low dose and only for a little while. So again, something that has to be individualized.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
You're welcome. I know they have the pellets and all kinds of things, but the gynecologist would address that.
I just wanted to say thank you for being in the healthcare industry, and what does the healthcare industry and education do to help people in your industry? Because I know a lot of them who are burned out from the long shifts and not eating well and the stress of having patients who die and things like that.
Exactly.
So what is being done for all of you?
That is a very good question. I have to be honest. I didn't see anything particularly being done for my group of physicians. I don't know about, no, it's every man and woman for themselves to figure it out, right? Unfortunately, maybe the nurses are getting a little bit more, I don't know. I know there was some discussion at the hospital that I do work at, one of the floors, about helping nurses deal with stress. I don't know how well something was implemented, so there was talk, but I haven't seen anything very grossly demonstrated that this is what we're doing. I haven't seen it.
So I had heard that National Institutes of Health were really studying mindfulness, and
Yes.
that fits in with what you're...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, my coaching practice is mindful health for women. So meditation, unplugging, just all kinds of basic things that you implement in your wellness plan. But a lot of times we gather information, like even tonight, it sounds good, but we need implementation. So go from gathering information to implementation. Like really go home and say, what do I need to do? What do I need today? What do I need tomorrow, this week, to help myself? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when you have wonderful unit secretaries like Tiffany, with that big, beautiful smile, oh my goodness, that will take anyone's stress away. And she's so helpful. And the winner is, I don't have my readers on. Can you help me?
Sadie?
All right.
And the Friends of the Library will let us know who won their silent auction. Ms. Corliss? Right.
And Siri.
Yeah.
And Tiffany.
Great. So thank you all for coming this evening. We invite you to come up and meet the author. She'd be happy to autograph your books, and they're still for sale, or answer your questions if you just want a minute to
And my
talk to them.
assistant is over there to help you get your book.
Yes, her handsome assistant, very handsome assistant. Thank you for coming out tonight. We very much appreciate it. Come on up and meet the author.
Thank you.